Are you feeling a little anxious about performing in the bedroom? Maybe you're experiencing erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation. Whatever it may be, things are just not going the way you want it to. Well, there's a good chance that there's actually nothing wrong with your body, and most of it is coming from the anxious thoughts you're having in your mind, also known as sexual performance anxiety. Today, we're going to cover exactly what that is, why it occurs, and then most importantly, some strategies for you to actually overcome it. Ladies and gents, or probably just gents for this video, I'm Brandon the Dom, and let's go ahead and dive. Now, I'm sure at some point in your life, you've had the situation happen where you're getting hot and heavy with a girl, things are going great, you're about to get to the point where you actually have intercourse, and then one of two thoughts probably pops into your head. The first being, oh God, I hope I stay hard the entire time. And the second one being, please, 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 please do not come too quickly. And the problem is when you have those thoughts, what happens? You have the self-fulfilling prophecy, and what you were so afraid of actually occurs. When that happens, you feel like a metric ton of shame, like a semi-truck of guilt and shame just hits you out of nowhere. You feel this deep pit in your stomach and you just want to curl up and never ever see humanity again. Now, I know this because I've been there as well. It's totally okay. You're okay. You're not less of a man because this is happening. In fact, it's actually something that's easily overcome. And we're going to talk about those strategies here in just a moment. But first, what is sexual performance anxiety? You've probably heard of performance anxiety before in terms of getting up on a stage and talking in front of people. Basically, you get up there, you get a little anxious, and then you're not able to give your speech. Well, the same thing happens in the sexual realm. You have a little bit of anxiety about how you're going to perform sexually, and this brings some problems with it, either in the form of erectile dysfunction or in the form of premature ejaculation. And this fear is often associated with negative emotions that you're trying to avoid, those being embarrassment, humiliation, rejection, or how being a failure might affect your sex life in the future. Second thing I want to address before we talk about why this is occurring is, although the technical term for this is performance anxiety, calling it a performance is actually part of the problem. And we're going to discuss this more when we talk about ways to reframe our beliefs and our thoughts around this so that it's actually something positive and we can actually benefit from it. You should also know that performance anxiety is actually quite common, and you definitely are not the only guy having it. About 52% of the male population within the US has some sort of erectile dysfunction, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. 1 in 2 guys is having a problem in the bedroom. And you probably don't hear about it often because we have all of this shame around it. There's also research to show that 1 in 4 guys, 25% of the US male population, experiences sexual performance anxiety. Now, these are only the people that actually responded to surveys and are reporting their problems. But how many of you are having these problems? You found this video, but you haven't really told anybody about it. You go unseen. So I'm guessing the numbers are a lot larger. And personally, this is something that I've dealt with at different points in my sex life. Depending on how my mindset is around sex, I can do just fine and last as long as I'd like. However, if I'm having some negative thoughts and beliefs around sex, it can impact that, and I can end up having erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation, just like you guys. But let's talk about some ways you can identify this first off. So the first kind of symptom that you'll see is erectile dysfunction. The way that you have an erection is you have blood flow going down to your penis. And when everything is normal, you're often in a parasympathetic state, which means basically rest and digest. It's promoting blood flow everywhere. However, when you start getting a little anxious, having some thoughts about how your performance is going to be in the bedroom, you start having some of these fears come up, right? There's some sort of danger in the future, danger of these negative emotions you don't want to feel, the embarrassment, the shame, rejection, and so on. Because you are perceiving that there's some fear in the future, it's putting your body into a sympathetic state, the fight, flight, or freeze state. And what it's doing is taking all of the blood that is in your reproductive system and shuttling it to muscles and organs and parts of the body that are needed to do that fight, flight, or freeze. And I'm sorry to say, but Your dick is not one of those things that is needed in the middle of battle. Now, the other way that this often shows up is through premature ejaculation. Now, before I kind of describe this, I want you to know how long you're supposed to last is really subjective to you and your partner. It's however long is necessary in order for you both to experience pleasure. And that can vary from partner to partner. It also can vary within the same partner. There's quite a difference between having, all night long sex capades and a quickie. And sometimes you want to be coming quickly, and sometimes you want to be extending pleasure session. So it's entirely subjective. As long as you both are left satisfied, there's no right or wrong time. Now, when you ejaculate, your body actually enters that sympathetic state just quick enough in order to start contracting your muscles. You have a muscle, what's called the PC in your groin. It's at the very bottom. And what it basically does is it tightens and contracts, and that is what allows you to orgasm and pushes out the ejaculate. So if we know that in order to orgasm, in order to ejaculate, we need to enter into that sympathetic state just very briefly. If we're doing things in our heads, having negative emotions that are going to push us into that sympathetic state, well, it's going to push and tell our body, hey, we're not actually supposed to be having sex right now. We need to wrap this thing up real quickly. So it's going to push you to ejaculate. The other scenario that sometimes happens is you're already having some negative thoughts and some anxiousness about your performance. And maybe you've had some erectile dysfunction in the past. So you're worried that when your erection finally does come, you need to use it as quickly as possible or you're going to lose it. And what this does is basically pushes you through foreplay very quickly. You have an erection. You're like, okay, I need to get it in now. Use it now. You get in there. And because you're already in this rushed, anxious state, you're not going to last very long. There's some other things that you might notice if you're having sexual performance anxiety. One is spectatoring. So this is basically where you're in your head the whole time, basically dealing with those thoughts, and you're not even noticing your own pleasure or what's going on for your partner. You're not very receptive to whatever their emotions, to their pleasure, whatever sensations that they're having, and you have no idea what's going on in your body. You also might notice that you have decreased sexual desire or that you are avoiding sex entirely. And this makes quite a bit of sense because if you are associating sex with fear, with negative emotion, with humiliation, being embarrassed and rejected, you don't want to experience those. So you're going to avoid situations where those come up. And unfortunately, right now, that is sex. So you might be avoiding sex entirely. And the final thing that you might notice is a louder inner critic. You know, that voice inside your head that basically says you're a failure, you're not a man, she's going to leave you. All of these negative thoughts that really are not serving you or helping the situation at all. Now, your inner critic is not really trying to be a jerk right now. Instead, it's trying to point you to something in your life that should be addressed, something that you care about and you would like to fix. That's what your inner critic does all the time. What's happening right now is you are amplifying those and you are calling yourself a failure, calling yourself not a man, because it is something important that you want to address. We're going to get to some ways to start reframing these in just a moment. So why does performance anxiety happen? We started to allude to it earlier when we were talking about erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation. Basically, your body, when you're having these thoughts, enters into a sympathetic state, the fight, flight, or freeze. And it shuttles all the blood that would be down in your dick into the vital organs and muscles and whatnot in order to fight, flight, or freeze. And it also wants you to finish as quickly as possible so you can get the heck out of there or begin fighting whatever you need to do to address danger, at least the perceived danger that you've started creating in your own mind. If we look at this diagram on the screen, basically what happens is you have those negative thoughts. You start overthinking things. You start worrying. Am I going to do well in the bedroom? Am I going to last long enough? Am I going to stay hard? You start thinking about all these things. And what it does is it leads you to start having negative emotions. Really here around stress and anxiety, upping the cortisol, things are not going well. And when you start having those negative emotions, it causes you the erectile dysfunction. And you label that situation as a failure. Like, oh my God, this shouldn't be happening. I should be a man. I should be able to do this. And this is a complete failure. And what that does is it fuels all those negative thoughts even more. And you get stuck in this feedback loop over and over and over again. And every experience that you have with erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation fuels this even more. So it becomes a very nasty feedback loop every experience that you have. Now, some of those things that may be kicking on those negative thoughts in the beginning of that feedback loop is just general anxiety and stress happening in your life that may not even be, pertaining to the bedroom. If you bring those thoughts into the bedroom and you haven't kind of decompressed beforehand, it can cause some anxiousness. Or you may have some general stress and anxiety about the relationship. And those relationship problems are showing up in the bedroom as well. You might be a virgin or just lack some sexual experience. And particularly if you have a partner that is more sexually experienced than you might just feel anxious about showing them a good time, being able to perform as well as them, and start getting some thoughts about them thinking negatively of you because you're a virgin or you're not very sexually experienced. Kind of related to this, you might also lack the education or skills, the technical things about how to eat a woman out, how to stimulate their clitoris or their G spot, and maybe just be worried that you're doing things the right way. You might also have some insecurities about your penis size. So whether it's long enough, whether it's girthy enough, or you may have other body confidence problems, just not feeling like you look good when you take off your clothes and worrying. So now that we understand what sexual performance anxiety is and we understand why it's happening, let's talk about ways we can actually overcome this. First off, sexual performance anxiety is not like an ailment. It's not something that can be cured. Rather, there's practices and techniques that you can use in order to make it so these negative thoughts aren't happening, so the loop never starts. You get out of your head and back into your body. What you're going to see with all of these techniques is a large part is focused on you getting out of your head and more into the body, the sensations, the pleasure that is actually occurring. Now, sometimes that can be really difficult if the thoughts are many and the loud inner critic is just like screaming at you. So the first strategy I want to share with you is that you can share with your partner what's going on. A lot of your anxiety is coming from perceptions that you have in your head about what you think your partner thinks about you. You probably have this list going on in your head about all the thoughts you think they have, all the judgments they have about your performance. And they're probably pretty extreme versions. So you don't have much evidence to actually back up that that's what they're thinking. This is known as catastrophizing. You basically make these extreme versions of what you think other people think, and you've never actually asked the other person. Instead, it would be much more beneficial for you to actually tell your partner you're anxious and talk with them about what it is you're anxious about. Now, I know this is probably the last thing that you want to do, but I promise it helps a lot. And I know because this is one of the very first strategies I ever used and continue to use because it works so quickly. I've been in situations where basically we've had lots of foreplay, things are getting hot and heavy. You can see that she's begging me to have intercourse with her, and I can feel that I'm not hard at all. Her eyes are waiting in anticipation, and my chest basically just folds just into these deep, dark pits. And I have to take a deep breath in the moments and basically tell her that it's not going to happen tonight. And usually in that moment, we'll lie down together, we'll cuddle, and I'll let her into my mind a little. I'll let her know that I'm anxious, and particularly when I'm anxious about. And 9 times out of 10, girls are very understanding. They're very compassionate in the moment. And it's going to feel like a major weight has been lifted because you actually get to hear what they're thinking. You actually get to hear what they are perceiving about the situation. And here's a little secret. If you're having erectile dysfunction in the moment, she's probably thinking in her head, what's wrong with her? Is she not attractive enough? Do you not like her? Those sorts of things. So actually talking about the situation with her puts her at ease as well. It's going to calm both of your nervous systems. Now, sometimes when that happens, we're able to calm down. Maybe we cuddle, we play a little bit, and then an erection happens later. We can get back to business. Other times we just talk and share each other's companies and erection never happens. Sometimes we just focus on her pleasure. Other times girls stimulate me in other ways, maybe giving me a hand job and blow job. Was able to stay hard long enough then to reach an orgasm. any of those outcomes are totally okay. This is particularly good if it's a new partner that you're with and they don't know this sort of situation's going on. However, if you have an ongoing partner, somebody that you're seeing quite regularly, and you have this situation go on and you haven't told them yet, you should probably talk to them because they already know something's up. So instead, let them in, let them know what's troubling your mind. And now, instead of being on two opposite sides where both people don't know what's going on or not talking to each other and kind of feel like enemies, you guys are on the same team and you're working together towards a solution. Now, let's talk about some of the beliefs, some of the actual thoughts, the content of what may be going through your mind and how we can change these so they're not ragging on your brain the entire time. The first belief that you probably hold is I must stay hard the entire time. I must be rock solid, 100%, be able to cut diamonds the entire time. And holding this belief is not serving you because it's not even how the human body works. Like the male body cannot stay hard 100% of the time. In fact, our body goes through cycles. So let's say you're at 100% hardness. Your body is going to go through the cycle where it goes soft a little. It might go down to 60% or maybe even 40%. And then as you're moving around, you're having more pleasure, you're focusing on the sensations, it cycles back to being towards that 90 or 100% hardness. Most of the time, you don't even know this because you're so focused in on the pleasure. And when that's happening, your body's just going through the cycles and you stay hard most of the time. You're cycling between 60 and 90% most of the time. What ends up happening though is if you're kind of stuck in this negative feedback loop right now, you may start off hard and then you're focusing so much on your hardness that when you notice any little bit going soft and lose any bit of firmness, you're saying, oh my God, it's going to happen again. I'm going to lose my erection. And that's going to kick you into that sympathetic state. And you, in fact, will lose your erection. What it's better to do is realize, oh, this is a natural part of my body. I'm just going to focus on the sensations rather than focusing on how hard I am at the moment. And just basically let your body do its natural thing. The next belief that you hold is, I must have an erection to experience pleasure. And I get it. Having an erection and having that erection stimulated feels amazing, right? If we could just be erect the entire time and have it stimulated the entire time, we're going to be in pleasurable bliss the entire time. And the reason you believe this is because you've basically been conditioned to believe that from all the years that you've masturbated. And that's what you focused on, stimulating your erection. However, actually have a bunch of erogenous zones all over your body, just like a woman does, that when you touch them can actually feel quite pleasurable. If you took a moment right now, you just kind of breathe in, exhale, kind of get yourself in a relaxed state, and then you brush one finger across your other hand. You can actually focus on those sensations and realize that it's actually kind of pleasurable. It feels kind of good to be touched, even on your hands. That's because on your hands, on your fingers particularly, are lots of sensitivity receptors. Same receptors that are on your penis. And the reason that it feels so good down there is because we have so many. But those receptors are all over our body, all over our skin. And so if you can focus on other body parts and focus your awareness on that sensation, you can actually get a lot of pleasure from being touched. And you do this enough, a massage, just being touched by another person can actually be as pleasurable as intercourse if you let it. All you need to do is build the awareness to the rest of your body. Now, if we just focus on your dick for a moment, you don't even have to be erect to feel pleasure and sensation in your dick. There's actually things called soft penis massage and cock worship, where the woman is focused on pleasuring your penis, but it's not hard at all. And the focus is not to get it erect and have an orgasm. It's just to experience the pleasure of being touched. And if you believe that having an erection is the only way that you can experience pleasure during sex, you're putting a metric ton of pressure on yourself in order to have that erection. But if you say, I don't need an erection to feel pleasure, I don't need it to be there the entire time, you're going to stop focusing on it. And paradoxically, it's going to come because of how much you're focusing on other sensations in your body. The next belief that you're probably telling yourself is, I'm not a man unless I'm able to have an erection and have intercourse with her. Now, I understand that biologically, being able to have an erection and have intercourse is something that a man is supposed to be able to do because biology has designed us to reproduce, and this is the part of our bargain for reproduction. Totally get that. And in that sense, this belief holds a little ounce of truth. But the real problem here has nothing to do with biology. The problem here is that you're using sex as a form of validation for your masculinity. You're basically putting sex in this category with a huge amount of weight and saying, if I'm not able to do this, I'm not a man. However, if we looked at your life, there's probably a ton of other things that you're doing as a man that would be considered very masculine. And you're basically saying, none of those matter. They're not worth anything. This is the only thing that matters. When in reality, all of these things still hold weight, even if you were having some problems in the bedroom. You need to stop seeing yourself as less of a man and realize you're just a man that has a certain problem at the moment. And there actually are solutions to solving that problem, including the techniques we're talking about in this video. So stop putting the extra shame on yourself and saying that you're not a man. The next belief is I have to perform well so she will like me. Now, this is a quite nasty one because there's several layers to it. And it's one that has personally gripped my own psyche. If you are engaging in a lot of casual relationships where the basis of the relationship is sex, this is another belief that holds a little bit of truth. Because if she's not having good sex and the relationship is built entirely on sex, well, then she's going to go looking somewhere else for good sex. So let's break this down a little bit and see the different layers, and let's start reframing them. The first layer of this is our fear that she's going to leave. This is our greatest fear in any relationship, that we're going to be abandoned and we're going to die alone. I've talked about this in the article, Our Greatest Fear in Our Relationship, that they will leave you. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. But what you need to realize is that her leaving is actually out of your control. You can do everything right and you can do everything wrong, but it doesn't really matter because that's up to her. You can't control her. In fact, you could fuck her like a rock star and she still might leave for reasons that are completely out of your control. So you have to let go of wanting to control the outcome. The second issue with this belief that I have to perform well so she will like me is that you're conflating your value in what you do as a person for the value of who you are as a person. You're believing that what you do in this world somehow makes you more or less of a human being. But actually, sex can be broken down into a set of skills. There's sexual techniques, and even having an erection and keeping that erection for a long time is also a set of skills. In fact, you're learning some of those skills now. Just because you don't have those skills yet does not make you any less of a human being. Doesn't mean that your value of a human being has all of a sudden gone down. If a kid doesn't know how to ride a bicycle, does that make him less of a human being than the other kids that do know how to ride a bicycle? No, they're still kids. They're all human beings. One's not more worthy than the other. One just happens to know skills that the other one doesn't. And skills are learnable. And the last part of this belief that I must perform well so she will like me is seeing sex as a performance. When you think about performance, what comes up for you? You might be thinking there's competition, there's pressure, there's an audience, there's a wrong and right way that this must be done, and there's often some sort of goal that you're trying to achieve. Now, I don't know about you, but none of that actually sounds that pleasurable for sex. Now, on this channel, we talk kink and BDSM, and in that scene, we label all of the acts in BDSM and even sexual acts as play. And play implies that there's no goal to it, and it's done just for the enjoyment of doing the act, just for the enjoyment of play. Implies fun and celebration, discovering and exploring new things with no right or wrong way to experience what's going on, and just enjoying ever arises. And that includes whether you have an erection or not. You can enjoy the parts and moments when you don't have an erection. When you're viewing it as play rather than a performance, I think this is much more pleasurable. It's much more fun and things are enjoyable, right? The last belief that can help you reframe is that I will make her orgasm and I am the source of her pleasure. To be really blunt about this, You are never the source of her pleasure. You may help facilitate her pleasure by being really skillful and doing different sexual techniques, but she is still the ultimate arbiter of her own pleasure because pleasure is subjective to her. She's always in control of that. Even if you do amazing things in the bedroom, just top tier sex god level amazing things, there's still a chance that she's not going to orgasm. But if you asked her right then in the moment, she's going to say that she's experiencing intense pleasure. Basically, she has thoughts and emotions and everything else going on in her head. And those things that are happening up here are going to dictate how much pleasure and whether she's able to orgasm or not. And you're not in her head. So you can't control any of those things. So I recommend taking pressure off of yourself to make her orgasm or seeing yourself as the source of her pleasure. Because believing that you're the source, and particularly believing that your penis is the source of her pleasure, is putting a metric ton of pressure on you to perform. Instead, you should probably ask her what's pleasurable to her and how you can help her to feel more pleasure, how you can facilitate some of that pleasure to happen. Many more things that you can use. Study your dick. You have hands, you have a mouth, you have a body that you can be rubbing on her. There's toys. There's a million different things that you can be doing. So ask her, let her be the arbiter of her own pleasure. Now, the next strategy I want to share with you is closely related to that last belief that we actually just talked about. And this strategy is to focus on your pleasure. You focus on you, and she will focus on her. See, the reason that you're having sexual performance anxiety is because you're having all these thoughts up in your head and you're staying up there. You're losing awareness of what's going on in your body, all the sensations and pleasure that you could be having. Particularly when you are stuck in this feedback loop, it's more beneficial for you to stop focusing on her and her pleasure and for you to focus on your pleasure, what's going on in your body right there in that moment. One of the things that I like to do when I'm having sex, and particularly if one of these situations is happening, is to ask myself any given moment and during any of the acts that are happening, is what would feel most pleasurable right now? And I want you to get really, really picky about exactly how you want something to feel. So if you guys are kissing, if you guys are massaging and cuddling, if she's giving you a hand job, if you guys are having intercourse, even if she's dirty talking with you, ask yourself the question of what would take those sensations from a 4 or 5 all the way up to a 10. And they're usually really simple things. You want her to stroke you in a different way. You want a different pressure. You want a different sensation. You want her to use more spit. You want her to say certain things. You have all these wants. So you're going to command her and tell her what it is that you want, or you're going to move her where you want. Really, you're going to be leaning into some of this dominant energy, commanding and moving and telling her so that you can get your needs fulfilled, which is what she wants to do anyways, especially if she's submissive, is to serve you, to have you experience lots of pleasure and for her to help you get there. So tell her what you want, because guess what? You are the arbiter of your pleasure. What this is going to do is it's basically going to get you out of your head. First of all, it's going to get you back in your body because you're concentrating really hard on your body now. It's like, oh, what would make this feel much better? What sensations would feel really nice right now? And the second thing it's going to do is kick you into that dominant energy, and you're probably going to get a nice feedback loop from her, which is just going to make the situation better. The next strategy that we're going to talk about is something that you can do outside of the bedroom to kind of practice these skills and then bring them inside the bedroom and use them particularly when you're getting stuck in that negative feedback. And this strategy is meditation. So I'm going to give you 3 different kind of exercises that you can do within meditation that are going to help. The first one is mindfulness meditation. And the basis of mindfulness meditation is allowing thoughts to come into your mind and allowing them to pass through. You're not grasping onto. When you're having sexual performance anxiety, basically a negative thought is coming in and you are holding on dear tight. You're thinking about it over and over and over again instead of letting it go. A lot of times in mindfulness meditation, they use the analogy of the sky and clouds. So the sky is your awareness and the clouds are all the thoughts in there. And what's beneficial to do is just like the clouds, you don't grasp onto them. They just kind of float and fly through the sky. You don't grasp onto them. What you're looking for is the space in between those clouds, looking for the sky, the actual awareness, the awareness of what's going on in the present moment. So if you have a mindfulness practice, a mindfulness meditation practice that you do every day, you can work on this skill and practice the muscle, allowing thoughts to come in and not grasping onto them and allowing them to leave. So that when you are in the bedroom and those negative thoughts come in, you've had the practice and can let them go. The second thing is doing box breathing. Basically, box breathing is just going to help you learn to focus on the breath and allow you to breathe more deeply. And when you're breathing deeply like that in a controlled way, it helps your body enter into that parasympathetic state and the rest or digest state, which is fantastic because that encourages blood flow. And we know what happens then. So the easiest way to do box breathing is just to do 4, 4, 4. So basically 4-second inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale, 4-second hold, 4-second inhale, and you just keep doing it over and over again. The last practice you can do in meditation is called body scanning. And this is basically where you start at the bottom of your feet or the top of your head, and you scan through your entire body, going to all the body parts and focusing on whatever sensations are happening there. So if we were starting at the bottom of our feet, we may start at our heels and then move to our foot and our toes, to our ankle, to our calves, to our outer and inner thigh, so on and so forth. You get the idea. As you start practicing this, you can focus your awareness on two things. The first is focusing your awareness on any tension happening in your body. So feeling where in your body you might be tense, and see if you can focus your awareness on that and start to relax it. You can even breathe deeply using some of those breathing techniques and breathe deep into where that tension is and see if you can relax it. This is going to be very helpful in the bedroom later, because especially if you're getting in that anxious state, you're going to be tensing your body. So if you can learn to focus that attention on the tension and release it, it's going to help a lot. But the second thing you can do is use your awareness while you're doing the body scan and focus it on pleasurable sensations. So as you're going through each body part, which sensations feel very pleasurable in your body? And as we've been talking about in the previous strategies, obviously this is going to help the more that you can get out of your head and be focusing on those pleasurable sensations in your body. Now, the next strategy is called Sensate Focus. This is actually a form of sex therapy or an exercise that you often get in sex therapy. And what it's helping you to do is disconnect the outcome. Everything must have an erection and everything must have an orgasm in order for it to be sex. And allowing you to view the entire experience around sex, the lead up, the foreplay, all of it, as something that can be pleasurable. Specifically focusing on a touch, that sensual touch that may be happening before your erection is ever stimulated. So Sensate Focus is usually done where you set aside an hour, 3 to 5 times a week, and you engage in this sensual touch and you go through 4 stages. So a really good thing to do is basically do 1 stage a week, and you would do this over a month. So stage 1 would be non-genital sensual touch. Basically, you're using your hands and you're rubbing it over your body, staying away from your genitals and focusing on what sensations you're having, where you could find pleasure in your body just by rubbing your hands over it. Stage 2 would be sensual touch, including the genitals. So you would continue touching your body everywhere, rubbing your hands, and then you would move to your genitals. You're not trying to get an erection here, nor are you trying to have an orgasm. You're just feeling the pleasurable sensations that are happening. In stage 3, so if we're doing this on a weekly model, this would be week 3. You're adding in lotion and lubricant because as you add those in, it's going to give you different sensations and different ways to experience pleasure. But you're still focused on a sensual touch, touching all over your body and focusing on the genital touch that isn't aimed at having an erection or having an orgasm. In stage 4, in week 4, that's when you have a full sensual stimulation. So here, you're still doing the practices that you've done the previous 3 weeks. However, now you can move more towards having stimulation for an erection and having stimulation for an orgasm. But you're mixing it in with all the other pleasure that you're receiving by touching other places. And the last strategy that I'll mention is actually doing therapy. So a lot of these strategies that I mentioned before, you can do on your own. However, it can sometimes be difficult if you're dealing with this, especially to get out of those negative emotions. You've basically thought about them over and over again. And so they're pretty ingrained and you really believe them and there's no way that you're getting out of it. So by talking with therapist or even with a sex coach, those people can help you see what thoughts you're having, key you into the emotions that come around those thoughts, and show you how it's kicking you in that feedback loop, and then help you to create a plan to overcome that. And a lot of times that plan includes doing a lot of these exercises that we talked about today. So if this is something that you're currently dealing with and you're stuck in that negative feedback loop, you've had some negative experiences and you want some help kind of working through all of that, I offer sex and relationship coaching. You can get a free session by using the calendar below. We can basically start talking about some of these thoughts that you're having, what occurrences are happening, and get you on a good path to overcoming this. It's something that I personally dealt with and have used many of these strategies, find them immensely helpful, and would love to help you with it as well. As always, thank you so much for your time and attention.